going to do a quick review of a Johnson by AXL jazz bass. You don't see that Johnson brand anymore, they discontinued it. It was a budget brand, and AXL is a budget brand to start with, so you still see AXL around, but you don't see these basses new, but you do see them on the secondhand market. They were not bottom of the budget lines, so you can find some decent quality. So this one I bought and had really cheap because it needed to be fixed up. And you might run into that too. Get some rosewood oil, clean up the fretboard. I had a lot of finger gunk built up over the years. And then I used a Scotch-Brite pad, a blue one, to polish up the frets. Then on the back of the neck, I did have a crack in the finish where the walnut expanded different than the maple, which can happen on any old bass. So a little bit of thin super glue in the crack, and then I sanded it. 800 grit gives you a nice, really nice feeling satin finish. The original finish on this was a semi-gloss that felt pretty good too. So tuners have no problem with them. Bridge, you know, they're inexpensive, but they're doing the job. Something to watch for. Someone had raised the pickups way up on this. The strings are actually hitting it, and even with the action height up. So I lowered the pickups. A good place to start. Just lower them until those mounting wings get down flush with the pick guard. And I set this up to standard action height according to the Dario action height ruler. And I have no buzzing frets. I have a little bit of curve in my neck. Didn't adjust the truss rod, so I think the neck's pretty stable because it was where I wanted it to be already. Now the output jack, something you find a lot of old basses, is you'll have intermittent issues. And so that was part of why it was less expensive. This jack was not a cheap plastic jack, it was actually a switchcraft style. So I just had to take the 3 screws off, lift up, and I bent that tab a little bit, and then checked with the cable, make sure it wasn't loose anymore. And then rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip, wiped out the inside of this, of the barrel part, wiped off the tip. No output issues now. So if there's one of the intermittent output issues, that's easy to fix. Knobs are working fine, other than this one's loose. There is a set screw I need to tighten up to tighten that one because it's kind of loose. So let's plug it in. These pickups, I've lifted them up to check them. It is Alnico bar magnets. So they're a step up from ceramic bar magnets you find on most cheap jazzes. So they're not unequal pull piece, so they won't quite sound vintage, but they do have pretty good tone to them. It does give jazz bass growl. These pickups are pretty quiet. You do get a little bit of hum when you roll on a single pickup because they are single coil. But I think that bar magnet is grounded and providing some shielding. So the hum is less than the Squire Affinities, the current Squire Affinities I've tried. Less hum than that. It's not shielded in a cavity, which is common, you'd expect that. So you expect you'll get some EMI noise if you're not touching the bridge or strings. But it's not bad actually. So I'll plug this in. I got my EQ flat and my little Ampeg. I'm not going to bother with with a DI cable because we're not comparing expensive basses. Now tone's pretty good. So you hear you do get jazz bass growl. That's both up, full tone, and we can pick it a bit. So I'd say, you know, with the headstock, this transparent red's pretty dark. I mean, it probably just looks like a burgundy. If you're up close, you do see the wood grain. So it's kind of a dark red look. The headstock, a bit jagged. So I think it looks like it's jazz bass meant for rock, but it works for jazz, anything you're playing, because it does sound like a jazz bass, including if we go to just the bridge. thins it up, brightens it up. Let's do neck only. Now it mellows it out. So, it does what you expect it to do. The tone knob does work fine. Let's roll that back. This is both up. Any buzzing is my mistakes, not the bass. So I'd say check them out. If you expect to find them cheaper than a Squire, because of the brand name, but the quality is better than some of the bad Squires, and so it's worth taking a look. Now, do be aware the neck on this, it's a P-based dimension neck, like you see on many cheap brands. So if you have a P-base, you like how it feels, you want a jazz, I'd say this is a good option, because you'll get the P-base neck. It feels pretty good, especially once I've made that satin finish. It feels great. But it won't be a thin jazz neck. So if you want a thin jazz neck, you love the thin jazz neck, look at other basses. Look at Squires, because the Squire jazzes will have a thin jazz neck. So let's go and put some drive on it too, so we can hear that. Let's crank it up some. That does fine. It can be a bit bright, so if you're running drive, you probably want to be mostly the neck pickup. And that sounds better. So I've got no issues with it really. So they're worth consideration, like I say. So check them out. You'll see them used, your local classifieds. Sometimes you'll see Guitar Centers, Musician's Friend will end up with them used. People would come trade them in, and they're definitely worth giving it a try. So, expect you're probably going to have to clean them up because they're going to be old. And, any cheap bass, people aren't going to take as good a care as if someone bought a more expensive bass. Usually, if it's the person who bought it usually takes better care of an expensive bass than a cheap bass. Yeah, subscribe and you'll get notified of the next video. And I will see you next time.